Hello everybody and welcome to this ILEX webinar. I'm Sally and today we're going to be providing you with an introduction to our Project Delivery Leadership Academy. We'll mainly be talking about what you get from the Academy and what it is and how the Academy has impacted other Academy graduates. Very shortly I'm going to be handing you over to Mike and Eddie. Mike heads up our consultancy team here at ILEX and Eddie heads up our client delivery team. And you seriously couldn't get two better people to tell you all about the Academy because they've both been entirely integral to not only the design of the Academy, but also as part of the delivery team. But before I hand you over, I've just got a couple of housekeeping bits and bobs that I'd like to run through with you. First of all, this session is scheduled for 1 hour. We're going to be leaving about 15 minutes at the end of the session to run through any questions and answers. But please do feel free to submit any questions you have as we go through the presentation. There's a question box to the right-hand side of your screen. So submit those questions. Rachel is going to be collating those and we'll read them out at the end of the presentation and then we'll answer as many as we possibly can. This session is recorded and tomorrow we'll be following up with an email. So look out in your inbox for an email. And it will give you a link to the recording of this session on YouTube so you can watch it again or you can share it with colleagues. It will also send you links that take you directly to our website so you can register your interest in the Academy. If you can, please all keep yourself on mute throughout the presentation. You can unmute if you want to ask a question at the end, but as we run through the presentation, it would be much appreciated if everybody is on mute. So I think now is the time to hand you over to Mike and Eddie, and I'd just like to thank you for joining this webinar, and I really hope you enjoy listening to our approach in developing project leadership capability within project teams. So over to you, Mike, Eddie, thanks very much.
Thank you very much. So just a very quick introduction of me, and then I'll hand over to Mike. And the other thing, just being honest about the technology, I'm sure you're all getting used to using different products, whether it's Zoom, GoTo, Teams, and of course, any one of us could have connection issues at any time. So one of the reasons is both Mike and I, in case one of us drops out, and sort of take over. But as Sally said, if you have questions, start writing them as we go through. So just very brief background so you can understand where I come from as we go through this. I have a background in originally telecommunications, originally through what was telephone rentals, Mercury, and so on, in order to sort of build on that career. Having left cable and wireless and telecommunications, I set up a consultancy in order to practice project and program management, having been a head of projects at cable and wireless. And then having left for a while the consultancy in order to sort of work with a large customer of mine, which was the United Nations. So I spent 7 or 8 years overseas, mainly working within sort of the development sector, conflict zones. Wound up being head of program in South Sudan during the 18 months of the first part of the Civil War, and then came back and sort of doing consultancy and support. So very practical based, but in an odd way, I've just completed my dissertation and master's in project and program management. So I also still believe in understanding and learning as much as I can. So that's a little bit about me, and what I'll do is hand over to Mike. Mike, have you got this screen?
No, I think you have at the moment, but it says we're waiting to view your screen and you're the presenter. So thank you for that, Eddie. So Mike Saville. I have worked with Eddie for many years now. I was involved in the beginning of the design and the development of the Leadership Academy that we're going to discuss with you today. My little screenshot there is a quick circuit around my thoughts on leadership. In my role, I'm a member of the management team at ILEX. I also lead our consulting practice. I've had the opportunity in that role to work for a number of different organizations in different environments and see leadership as it's practiced in some quite interesting environments, including post-conflict environments in Sudan, present conflict in Kabul, but also in quite a lot in the Gulf, in Europe, and of course in the UK. but I'm also I have multiple facets to my role. I'm a parent.
So,
hi, sorry.
That's right.
So yeah, and the purpose of the picture that you can, I hope you can see on screen at the moment, is that some of my experiences taught me that, particularly as the father of two sort of teenage boys, that sometimes leading from behind is one of the most impactful practices that you can adopt, and certainly required in delivery. So thank you for joining us here today, and we will now take you through the introduction to our academy.
Perfect. So what we're going to do is just do a couple of polls, and again, just to get you sort of used to how the system works. So on the right-hand side is ability poll. So hopefully, Rachel, you'll open poll number 1 for us, and then what everyone should have is a view in order to now vote. So if you can have a look at how the poll's going, yeah, which roles you are, brilliant. You got a choice of project manager, program manager, SRO, and so on. So only 57% of you have voted. Please, as I say, we don't want to take too much time in doing this. We've got one other poll after this, again, to make sure that we pitch this at the right type of people. So one of the reasons for doing this, to make sure that we understand who we've got in the audience, and in order to make sure that we're hopefully speaking to the right people. Okay, well, we have just about 80% of you voted. We'll give it another few seconds to do this, and then we'll take the screen back and do it. So 81. Rachel, do you want to close the poll and then display it? Good. So, and I think
Second poll.
Yeah. And what we'll do now is we'll click to the second poll, and it's really to understand what size your organization is. So it's just giving us indication of the organization you work with, how many project staff have you got, and again, so we can start to see the type of audience that we have. So again, faster voting, getting used to it, good. It's the advantage of doing a couple early on, because we have some polls later on in terms of the content that'll be useful to get your input on. So at the moment, 42% of those that are answering work in organizations where there's between 75 and 100 plus project staff in your organization. Good. So we've got 72% that voted. We'll leave it open for a little bit longer in order for. Okay. Good. So Rachel, if you can hear me, I think we can close the poll now. Good. Okay. Well, thank you for that. As I say, it helps us to understand who we.
Okay. So the first question that we wanted to share with you is of course the fundamental one. Why a project leadership academy? What is it about this academy that makes it different from the kind of development and capability raising inputs that you'll have come across before? And when we did the design for this, we formed it around sort of 4 key pillars, really. First is our conviction that the world of project delivery is increasingly moving from the efficiency that we all continue to focus on and celebrate, and which we see repeatedly in the iron triangle of time, cost, and quality, into a more effectiveness focus. So we're looking at project delivery which is benefits led, and which is focused on ensuring that we solve the problem that the project was set up to deliver, and that we get the results from it that we're hoping to. We manage our way towards that, and that requires extra leadership from those involved in the delivery team. We know that complexity is increasing, and that what we need are leaders who are equipped to deal with projects that are increasingly complex for their stakeholders and for the delivery teams. We focus on authenticity in the PDLA as well. We try and help people to acquire the sort of practical leadership skills that are in alignment both with themselves and their project teams and their capability and the goals of the organization. And that involves thinking authentically about how you can deliver the project. And we make no apology at all about the fact that our academy focuses on return on investment. We need our graduates to realize their potential as assets to the organization. So, and even when on training, they're developing themselves and developing their capability in order to ensure that the organization benefits instantly from participation in the academy. If I move on to the next slide. This is what some of our graduates from the academy would like to say about us and what it delivers. Clearly, as you would expect, in an input like this, we pass on some techniques, and the techniques tend to be focused around the delivery of benefit and ensuring that we get the right input from the projects to solve the problems that they're set up to deliver. In terms of confidence, we talk about many people encounter when moving into leadership roles the concept of the imposter syndrome and not being ready. We try and help people to explore their own capability, to understand if they have limits, and then to focus on developing so they can meet the challenges. In terms of resilience, we talk about techniques like sort of mindful leadership and talking about creating a psychologically safe environment to deal with the challenges that we face when leading projects. In terms of the kind of change we deliver, because we're results focused in the techniques that we teach and in the planning and in the management tools that we review in this academy, it leads to change in our delegates and in their organizations, and we'll be talking about the impact of some of that change later on. And as mentioned before, return on investment is a key element. We want, these are all quotes, by the way, from delegates that you see on screen at the moment. We want to ensure that our delegates understand the value that they can add as an asset to an organization, and start claiming that right from the beginning of the academy all the way through. If we can move on to the next slide. So in terms of what it is, we'll talk about it in a little bit more detail in a second, but at a high level, there are three sort of characteristics to our Leadership Academy. It's a modular delivery model, so we move through a series of themed topics so that the learning builds and has time to accelerate across different topics as we go. We talk about a challenging environment in which the invitation is to challenge accepted approaches and to rethink. Many of our graduates describe the process of enacting some of the techniques that they've learned in rethinking governance, in challenging the way that structures are in place, because what they may have to begin with doesn't necessarily solve the problem they're setting out to address. It doesn't achieve everything that it needs to, and so we encourage that sort of challenge, and that is included in the academy as well, where we challenge accepted norms around project delivery. And the third element that we see into that is talking about practical techniques. These are techniques that we can start to use from day one in the academy that will lead to a positive change in our behaviours and an uplift in our capability. So with that, I think I'll hand back over to Eddie.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is just take you through the modules. And in an odd way to start with, we're starting with the last module, Module 5. So Module 5 is called at the moment Learning to Learn. And this happens many months after the final module where you were actually learning things, to give everyone attending enough time to practice anything that we've covered in the earlier modules. And at 5, we're getting everyone back together, but everyone has to present 4 or 5 slides on what has changed in terms of their behavior, their competence, and more importantly, for the first time we've seen, this ability to do a return on investment. So what is the cost of attending? What have you changed? What is the impact of that? And we've had in the current cohorts that we're putting through with one particular large organization, this is the 7th cohort, each cohort having 25 plus people on it, so quite a few people through. Every single cohort, at the very least, one project is either stopped or not started or finished early, just as one indicator in terms of the type of return on investment. And we'll share some of those, because it's that challenging. It's that, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this now? And so on, as well as doing some efficiencies. So Module 5 really is a celebration, but it's that evidence-based that you have done something and you've shared it with the network that you've been working with. Before that is Module 4, we call it Learning to Juggle, because really at this level, it really is, how do we make sure that we're working on the right things and we're prioritizing the right things, and that we're actually focused on doing what we should be doing in terms of managing delivery, as opposed to getting involved in all the other things. So it really is about that delegation, and also making sure that we're holding ourselves and others to account. Module 3 is tough love, and this really is that start of that journey of holding ourselves and others to account. How do we actually make sure that if people are delivering, that we know that delivery is happening? How do we, if we commit to something, how do we make sure that we actually do what we say that we're going to do? And if we don't, back to something Mike's already said earlier, in terms of being authentic in our leadership, that we're being clear in our communication as to what is the impact. And a lot of this work is with a learning partner, a buddy, as well as obviously facilitated through the program. Module 2 is the most intense. Module 5 is 1 day. Module 4, 3, and 2, they're all 2-day events, but this is a long 2 days and it's quite intense. We're actually taking the cohorts through a scenario where we're getting them to plan something they've never planned before. So it's this concept of, many project managers are very good at what they do. You'll hear these sort of phrases, if you're the type of project manager that gets given a project and you produce a Gantt chart, 500-line Microsoft project Gantt chart, great. It means that you're doing a project you've done before. You know how to produce basically all the activities that need to be done on the project. Where we're aiming for, though, is that next level, which is project managers who can take on projects they've never done before. That capability to do complex, risky, innovative, where you cannot possibly create those type of schedules. But you also have to have that leadership to be able to take people through who are expecting these type of scheduling tools because of past type projects. So, and we give them different techniques really around the whole journey of planning. We're going to share one with you in a short while, just to give you a flavor of something we do, and it's to do with risk as an example. And module 1, again, this is 2 days, and we're really trying to get people to look in the mirror. 2 sides. We call it Tradecraft. I mean, do you really understand, our profession, our tradecraft? And we're not saying you don't. It's just, for simple things like we put up a list of methodologies, and we get people to sort of look at the dates. And of course, there's lots of people, for instance, I'm sure some of you out there, Agile, some Print, some have your own methods. It doesn't really matter to us. They're all the same in terms of different things. But I'm sure there's a lot of you who think, the latest is Agile. Well, it's the oldest. And 1932 is when Kanban was started being used. Scrum was before Prince. And it's understanding that, there's a lot of myths around. So it's that challenging are we accepting everything, just accepting it because someone said it, or do we know how to really critically think and challenge what is the most appropriate thing that we need to do for this particular delivery? And the other bit of the mirror is holding up is our competencies, our behaviors, and our skills and strengths. It's okay if all you can plan is projects that you've done before. There's nothing wrong with that. This is not a judgment call. But if you aspire to be able to do projects that you haven't done before, what is the change in the competence that you may need to do that type of planning, and so on? And same with managing conflict and so on and so forth. So again, we're helping to understand that distinction so that you can do the sort of development. And module 1, before that is module 0, which is a sort of a lazy day, as we call it. It's not quite a full day, but this is really just to pull everyone together and make sure that the group comes together, understands how to work in this sort of environment. We tend to use Zoom at the moment as the simplest tool. We have used Teams, we've used this, but Zoom is our poison of choice because of the flexibility, and it copes with much more sort of terminals and devices and so on. But really to get used to it, also experience the working in the group, some of the techniques and so on, but also introduce that critical thinking early on so that we start learning it's okay to challenge each other in a very positive way. So those are the sort of modules 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, and of course blast off. So that's the sort of sequence. Mike, do you want to sort of just?
Sure. So what we want to do on this slide then is bring to light some of the other aspects of the piece, because as Eddie's just rehearsed for us, the Academy is focused on a series of sequential modules, each taking its own topic. So obviously we're starting from blast off and going through all the way to our final module, learning to learn, which Eddie's just described. But if you give it a click for a couple of animations, Eddie, what you'll see is that there are a number of different elements to the Academy that Eddie's touched on already, that we have a learning buddy. The learning buddy relationship is a really important one, and what we do is we match members of the Academy to a colleague based on a number of a couple of very simple criteria, and the learning buddy then helps you to reflect on your learning, helps you to offer as a critical friend observations of the work that you're doing on the piece, and can provide be a sounding board or be a sympathetic ear sometimes in terms of how you are sort of developing your capability within the modules. There is intermodule works, of course, as well. There are, whether that's articles or different reading, challenging reading, supporting critical thinking, or if it's about applying some of the techniques that we've learned in the modules to your everyday work, to your project or to your program, and those continue throughout the modules as well. Once we get to beyond module 2, then we also introduce a coaching element to that, and so but this is coaching around project leadership in particular. So we support each of our delegates with a coach who will help to familiarize them with some of the concepts that have been shared through the modules, and also to provide a source of guidance or attention with particular challenges that the programs are delivering. The network that builds up around each of our cohorts so far is one of the things which is consistently reflected positively in the feedback that we get, because it creates a community of people with a similar background, learning similar things at a similar time, and being happy to share their learning and offer support to each other in the delivery of programs. And then finally, at the bottom, you see we also have done a number of electives in support of the module. So it's an elective. Not everybody would necessarily choose to go on it, but many of them do. And what they do is they take a dive slightly deeper into some of the aspects that we visit in the module. So it could be around thinking, trying to anticipate the thoughts of an SRO or a program director. It could be around change management, or a delve into a critical review of the application of risk management, for example. And those sort of complement the modules as they go. So there are several strands to the Academy, which comes together to what we hope forms a very rich experience in terms of developing the leadership capability. I'm going to hand back over to Eddie now, so that we can take a look at lift the lid a little bit on on some of the modules.
Yeah, so we're gonna cover a little bit from module 0 and 1 in terms of critical thinking, just to give you a flavour. And also module 2, we're going to look at this. So one of the things we always do is we start off with quotes and try to get the people to debate. Obviously, there's too many, we won't do the debate. But here's just a flavour, and again, I ask you to reflect and just enter into the spirit of it. The reality is, even though people attend development, it's that first one, Churchill. I'm always ready to learn, although I do not like being taught. Because there is an element of being a project or a program manager that we're expected to be confident all the time, and we're expected to already know things. So again, we do come across that sort of that need to sort of understand that it's okay for all of us to continually learn and experience different things from different people. What I love is I was able to find a Bruce Lee quote to then go against Churchill, which is, you will never learn anything new unless you are ready to accept yourself with your limitations. You must accept the fact that you're capable in some directions and limited in others, and you must develop your capabilities. And again, it's back to understanding that as we get into more and more complex delivery, it is about understanding your limitations, and doesn't mean you can't do it. It just means you now know where you need help and support, and that continuous sort of guidance, that draw from the SRO, or if you are an SRO or a head of program or something, that ability to then also know where to provide that support. Next one, if you're not thinking for yourself, someone else is thinking for you. Choose yourself and become free from society's undertow. The universe is ready to support you. What we encourage is to challenge, and don't believe it. Don't believe the book. Don't believe the body of knowledge. Don't believe the company. It's not that this. We don't think they're wrong. Don't get me wrong. They're written as guidance. They're not written as fact. They're written there to help us, but it doesn't mean they're right for that moment. And if we're not careful, what happens is we blindly follow a process. It could be our internal one. It could be one from a book. It could be one of the methodologies. And somehow we've got ourselves in the loop to thinking that if we follow this, the world will be perfect. But actually, it reduces our capability to what's called level 2, and I'll sort of come on to that in a moment. In terms of maturity, in other words, it's just repeatable. We're doing it because we were told to do it, as opposed to understanding why and then doing it in a more powerful way. Then progressive social change cannot be made without leadership ready to take risks. So, and this backs into risk management as well, that people often think that risk management is about reduction, but it's also about understanding what risk to take and how to take it and how to make sure the organization is ready for that. And that includes personal risk, because in order to be an authentic leader, sometimes we have to call things out. We have to be able to stand in front of a board, if that's the type of governance we have, and make sure that we're heard and we're listened to, but not in an emotional way, but in a sort of way that helps people to understand what it is that we're trying to get in terms of support. And then just a more of a rhetorical quote there: what came first, the change-ready company or the change-ready employee? And where we come from is an individual can make a difference. If you're sitting there waiting for your organization to improve their project management capability, then wait, or do it, make a difference. And actually one little step change at a time is a mammoth difference, as opposed to thinking you have to implement all sorts of things. So again, we encourage, to take something you're passionate about and do it well, and help other people to learn within your own sort of organization. So we always start with quotes, and we have conversations around it, see how it means to people, and sort of start driving our thinking process as to why we're trying to do it. So this one, a bit busy, but I'm just going to cover 3 separate things very, very quickly, so that we again just get inside a way of thinking. So some of you, not sure if all of you, would have come across P3M3, Portfolio Program and Project Management Maturity. Don't worry, I'm not trying to tell you anything, convince you of anything. I just want to show you a model. Level 1, I hate numbers, by the way, because it implies one's better than the other. 1 is, do you know the difference between business as usual and projects? Simple test. Do you know the difference between projects and programs, and do something differently? Do you know the difference between a project, a program, and portfolio? So I'm not going to keep doing all 3 Ps, but that's the very simple test at level 1. Level 2, I'll just stick at the project level, but I can use the same 3 Ps. Do you have a way of doing projects in your organizations that's repeatable? You may have all been on the same course, you may have your internal guide, you might all rally around processes that have come from the body of knowledge. It doesn't really matter, but is it repeatable? In other words, do you have to do it every time? So that's level 2 maturity. Level 3 is you have a central process, but you have the freedom to flex. You have the ability to really look at your delivery, take the standard, and then figure out how to apply, build, and sort of tweak it. That's level 3. I'll give you a couple examples in a moment to sort of hone this down. Level 4 is a bit like ISO 9001. You're continually improving your processes, your project management processes, based on your ability to record it and so on and so forth. And then level 5 is optimization, proactive problem solving. You could argue that you attending this is an example of level 5 thinking, because you are proactively looking for ways to improve. And the reason I say that is because this is not a step. This is not you do 1, then 2, then 3. You may have behaviors across the whole thing. The issue with optimization is, can you optimize it if you still have areas at the sort of repeatable area that aren't improving? So I'll give you two examples. We did an assessment a few years ago with an organization who thought they were in the 4s and 5s, so, and they were really good. They're well known. I'm not going to say who they are, but so in order to assess this, the first thing you do is a desk review. You sort of go through their current documentation, examples of real projects. So we had a project document, we read it, and we came to the quality paragraph. And honestly, there's 45 people on. All of you would be weeping if you read it. It was stunning, you know, as you went through. This is, they know quality. I then read the second project document from a different project manager, and it was exactly the same paragraph. And when I read the third and the fourth and the fifth, cut and paste. So quite frankly, all the evidence you need for an organization that's stuck at level 2, any project manager that simply cuts and pastes from one document to another, it's level 2. It's, I can't be bothered, or it's because the gate process, well, you can't get through the gate, you can't get improved unless you have a quality plan. Jane did one really well once, I'll use that one. So it's that mindset of, we're here to just fill in a bit of paper, so I'll fill it in to get it through. If that's the case of the organization or the individual, then that's just process and we're repeating. Level 3 might not be very exciting. It might be 3 bullet points. You know, 1 will follow standard operating procedures, 2 will have 2 external audits on the key areas, and 3 will ask the project board to do 3 audits that are unplanned for us. So you know, and then you can debate whether it's useful or not, as opposed to just cutting and pasting. The other example is risk. I don't know if you can imagine how many risk registers I've seen in my lifetime. Thousands, and I hate them. I hate them with a passion because of how they're just, you know, a bit of paper that people fill in. Risk, flood. That's not a risk. It's a word. Risk. It's a proper thing that we have to understand. So again, how many times have we seen a risk register that has 3 entries on it, done from the beginning and never changed? So again, it's that type of thing. It's level 2. I did it because I had to. The process said I had to do a risk register, but that's level 3. Well, we're going to, again, we'll sort of give you a little bit of an insight into what a level 3 example could look like in a moment, because it is about managing the risk, not logging it. So and really the difference is between level 2 and level 3. Level 2, I do what I'm told. I do it because the process says. I do it because the book says. I do it because, you know, I do it. Level 3 is I do it because I understand it, and I choose to do it, and I choose to apply it properly because I understand it. And it's understanding of tradecraft. So that jump between 2 and 3 is quite large. 4 and 5 are quite easy because it's continual process improvement, but you're not improving the right thing if you're stuck at level 2. So that's that model and why we sort of, the other one's Eddie O'Bang. You may have come across Eddie. He really came up with the idea there's 4 different types of change: paint by numbers, movie, quiz, fog. Paint by numbers, we've done it before, we know how to do it. Give me a project, I produce a Gantt chart type thing, steady Eddie. Quest, COVID, you know, we had a stunning, you know, we had a sort of compelling goal. Didn't really know how long it would take, how much it would cost, but we've driven it that way. Movie, these are projects we know how to do and we do them, but we don't really know why we're doing it. Millennium Dome, very good example. Millennium period, build a dome. What was going in it? No one knew until a few weeks beforehand. It was because we knew how to build a dome. So, and then fog. Well, this is actually where the gold is. Any organization can do projects that it hasn't done before and gets them right. If you're private sector, then you get your sort of commercial gain. If you're public sector, this is where you'll be able to provide innovative services to the public, get it right first time. So the modules and everything that we're doing is trying to get people to work in the fog. It will help with the others, but primarily what we're trying to do is make sure that people are at level 3 in their ways of behavior and thinking and be able to work in the fog. So that's, you know, very, very fast, and I apologize for the speed at which I'm chucking through that. So what I now have is a classic where my cursor won't move to my second screen. in order to move the slide. So what I'm going to do is just focus on risk now, just to show you an example of level 3 risking. So this is about things that we would normally do in a risk register, and I'm sure you'll recognize this. It'll be a variation of whatever you do. A description. So this is the first thing that we hone in on, and I know I'm teaching to suck eggs, but trust me, when I see risk registers, we don't even see the basics. A proper description: cause, event, effect. As a result of unseasonal rain, there may be localized flooding, and we won't be able to do the foundation work. I don't know, something random like that. So when we come to do everything else, are we trying to do unseasonal rain? Is that what we can? No. There might be localized flooding. Can we deal with that? Yes, we might be able to sandbag and those sort of things. We wouldn't be able to do the trench work. Okay, well, that could be more expensive, waterproof cement, and so on and so forth. So it's the description that is the key to everything. Probability. In a workshop, we would only go high and low. We would not have a debate around 5 different levels, mathematics. Just what's going to kill us, what's the ones that are going to hurt us. Same with impact, high or low in a workshop. After the workshop, when we're preparing the project or program, we would then do the analysis correctly. Expected value, in other words, is that acceptable? Is a high risk acceptable, or are we going to do something about it? And if so, which are we going to try to do? Impact reduction or likelihood reduction, or are we going to attempt a miracle and do both? Proximity. So when is this risk most likely to happen? Date. None of this far, medium, when. And if you then say, well, it could happen more than once, okay, when? When's the earliest it can happen? So really focus. And at that point, quite frankly, we say, forget the rest of the risk register. Forget it, because no one looks at it. Go to your plan at this point and go to the proximity. And then once you're at the proximity, work backwards. Do the normal treatment stuff. Am I going to avoid it, mitigate, have a contingency? So work backwards from the date that the risk is going to happen and decide what you're going to do in order to reduce likelihood. Again, work backwards to reduce impact. And then work forward, so if the risk happens, we know what plan B is and plan C if need be. And because it's on the plan, we treat it as a deliverable. We wrap it up as a work package or whatever you want to call it, allocate it to someone, roles and responsibilities, and then monitor it. Because guess what? Risk management is not risk registering. It's about managing risk. The job of a project manager and a program manager is to proactively manage risk. And how can you do that if you don't have a management plan for it? So that you have all your risks on a plan, so that again, you can then spot consequential things around complexity. Maybe you have 3 or 4 high risk. If you're a program manager, imagine having, let's say you had 10 projects, start and end date, and you're able to look at when the high risks are across the portfolio of your program. You suddenly realize that a particular area could be to do with the holiday period or something, that you suddenly realize that a large percentage of your portfolio is about to have a critical risk. So it is understanding how do we manage and look. Now, is that the only way? No. What we're trying to give you is an example of that distinction that we take people through, which is the practical side, as opposed to the academic side, which has been around for 40 or 50 years and invented at a time which is entirely different. How do we do it now, and what is a good thing in terms of practice? So again, just take this because in terms of time, what we then push them is, well, what if you inherit a project and it has a traditional risk register? Fine, and you check it, you go through, okay, I'm doing due diligence, I'm taking over the project, and then you realize that the original business case was based on not having any of the risks happen, which is often the case, that you have this business case presented, and annex is the risk register, but you're assuming that the reader has read it and then said, oh, so what we're saying is all the risks happen, it's going to cost more and take longer. So, and yes, you might have contingencies, you might have risk, but do they understand it? As opposed to giving them a simple graph, for instance. You can see the thin line going up is cost if no risks happen. The thin line going to the other side is how long the delivery will take if no risks happen. And then the thicker lines going up is if all the risks, the high risks, the high likelihood, high impact risks happen. This is what it could cost us. And going to the right, this is what it could take in extra time. Now, silently ask yourself the following question. What is the likelihood that the project will have none of the risks happen? Probably 0. What is the likelihood of all the risks happening? Some of you maybe think more, but again, 0. It's unlikely they will all happen. So what is the percentage that you think in your organization, the amount of risk that might happen? And it doesn't matter what you're thinking, 20%, 30%. What you're now realizing is that the project that you submitted is not going to happen. It won't. It can't possibly be delivered because you're assuming that no risk will happen and you're going to have contingency and change control. That's all that's words, as opposed to the practical reality of integrating risk into the complexity so that the person who's signing off the business case understands it. So again, what we're just trying to demonstrate to you is that distinction that the Academy is trying to do, which is take your existing knowledge and stretch it to a practical state. Mike, do you want to sort of take us where we are? And
yeah, so the extract that Eddie was sharing there was from our module 2, and the activities that goes on from module 2 is to start to immediately apply some of the planning and slightly more leverage techniques into your own programs and projects. And so you can see that that's when activity picks up in our other streams, including the coaching, which begins post number 2, and the electives, which start to make available the sort of deeper dive into techniques like risk, as Eddie's been describing, or like benefits-led planning, those sorts of pieces, which come in through the electives, which then come on stream at that point. And I think there's just a couple of animations, Eddie. So if you just do 1, 2, 3, 4 clicks, we should get on to the next slide. Cool. So, and our next piece is reflecting on those electives, and we have a poll for you. So, which elective topic would be most valuable to you? So, if you think it's benefit management, change management, starting to think like an SRO or anticipating SRO level thinking, risk, or another. If it's another, you can put something into the question box.
So, Rachel's opened the poll, and again, if you can do that. Okay, we've got 40%. Benefit management seems to be leading the moment, with change management sort of coming in at a similar percentage. About 55% of you have voted at the moment. So again, if the others want to sort of indicate what their sort of preference, and again, it just helps us to understand where the trends are going, to make sure that these sort of academies are always focused on the need of the delegates as opposed to what we think people need. And again, although there's, for instance, 12% thinking like an SRO, it is interesting in terms of percentage of people who arrived who are either an SRO or head of program type role. So good. Okay, we've got 63% voted, sort of stuck on that at the moment. So if anyone else is going to vote, please do so now so that we can close the poll and then move one step further on. All right, Rachel, do you want to close that poll? Good, thank you for doing that. As I say, it helps us to help you. We have another poll for you in terms of, again, outside of these modules, what 2 aspects of the Academy might be interest your organization? Coaching, electives, work shadowing. I think you're only going to be able to pick one, but have a look when the poll comes up. And yeah, so again, networking with buddies was the immediate hit from people that were voting. We've got coaching electives coming through. So again, if you want to vote, we've had about 45% of you voted, and it's coaching and networking seem to be the 2 that come through as the largest percentage, with electives and work shadowing similar percentages, around 15%. Good. So we've had 60% of you vote. We'll leave it open for a few more seconds to enable those that are still considering what they might choose. end, unless you're having a little bit of difficulty moving the screen. So Rachel, I think, again, we've had about a minute. That should be enough. If you want to close that poll, that'll be fantastic. Okay, so Mike, do you want to?
Yeah. So one of the things that we wanted to illustrate for you is the impact that the PDLA has on its graduates. And so it's because we use a module 5, which deliberately stresses the graduates' opportunities to state how they have, what they've learned, how their behaviours have changed, and how the impact that the learning that they've had and their capability building they've done has been felt on their projects and on their programs. It's always a great pleasure to be involved in module 5, and we're able to quantify the immediate impact both on both people and on their programs of completing the academy. And so what we wanted to do is share a short video from one of our graduates. This is Emma Formoy, who's a project director and also a fund and benefit realisation manager with the Environment Agency, talking a little about her experience and the impact of completing the academy. We hope that this will be good.
It might be that you have to do it from your screen if you want to take back,
Okay.
because I'm not sure. Remember, oh yeah, I've got it. So let's see if the sound comes through.
In terms of what I was expecting from the Project Leadership Academy, it was very much for me an opportunity to do some training about project delivery, which was much more about those leadership skills and not about technical processes. And actually that meant that I needed to understand what good leading looked like and how what I role modelled influenced the people who worked with me and how they delivered on a technical basis, because it's very easy to follow a program and a process, but actually things don't always go to plan, and having the ability to step back and make those strategic decisions, which may not be the kind of public light decision, but actually from a project delivery perspective are the better decision. It is a real skill that I kind of needed to develop, and I think the Leadership Academy really gave me the foundations for that. You know, it didn't make me a perfect decision maker by any stretch of the imagination, but I think that learning from everybody else's perspective, and certainly that perspective across different projects within my own organisation and externally, but also learning from the trainers' experience as well, and how they talked about some projects which were off the scale compared to what I was doing, which made me really think about, actually, this is about making the right decision with the evidence that you've got, and not about stressing too much and really dwelling on it, and actually having to just go with gut feel sometimes as much as anything else, but with the right foundations behind you for the to kind of go with, to stick with that decision and understand why. So for me, that's what other training and kind of other skills training and project delivery have never really given me. That was very much kind of a process, and this was very much the how do I deliver, how do I manage my team, how do I talk to stakeholders, and how do I really show that my ability to lead a project is different to my ability to deliver and work a program and things like that. So for me, that's very much what the Project Leadership Academy gave me, was that completely different perspective on my own performance, really.
Good. Mike.
Yeah, so as I said, we gather information from delegates who are developing their capability and testing the impact of that capability throughout the programme. And in Module 5, they present it back to their peer group, so that you'll see the quotations and extracts from those presentations on the screen at the moment. So it's certainly not uncommon for them to identify tangible savings and cost reductions as a result of applying some of the techniques that they've learned. There's a relatively small reduction in the quote on screen there, but we've had £500,000 saved by challenging the requirement to run a whole project phase, just as an example. The behavioural change slide that you can see on the screen is indicating the other sort of side of the impact of the academy, and it's about this delegate in particular took on the techniques around planning and regular iterative planning based on an increased awareness of how much time he was spending in the fog in his projects, and so the value that he got out of always trying to make time, even under a very stressed and demanding environment, to do regular iterative planning had a very positive effect on both on him and on his stress levels and on the value that the project was delivering. If you can move on, Eddie, I'll look at the next one. And clearly also we hope that the PDLA will be able to very readily demonstrate a positive impact on projects and programs and on the organisation. So again, a sort of a typical quote from some of our graduates, which is that by replanning or questioning need or challenging a requirement, it was not unusual to find that they could replan a project and would take some cost out of the delivery or get to benefit or release value quicker. And that there are both tangible and intangible impacts that are illustrated by this extract from another of our delegates' presentation. Clearly, there are cost savings, and there are funding requirements that can be improved, but also there are a number of those things which are harder to put the pound sign behind, but are about behaviours and confidence and resilience in those who are delivering their programs and having the extra ability and adding the value that all of that can bring as well. Can you move on? So now I'd like to hand over to Sally, who kicked us off to begin with, to talk about how you can get access to our Leadership Academy.
And then we'll have some questions. Sally, are you still there?
I'm here. Fear not. Thank you very much, Eddie and Mike. So if you're sitting here thinking that this is an academy that is going to help you take that step up to leading a project team and you want to know how to access the learning, there are a couple of options. Option one is by attending our public virtual academy. As you can see, we have got the 6 modules that Eddie and Mike have described. And it also includes 4 hours of coaching. So you would have a dedicated coach throughout the 6-month academy. That's the length of time it will take to complete the academy. And you will be dedicated a coach from the outset throughout that 6 months. So that's what you will get if you attended it as a public virtual academy. All those dates are scheduled and booked in. And you will be joining the group with other delegates from other organisations from both private and public sector. If you have, alternatively, option 2, if you've got a group of project professionals within your organisation and you'd like to run it as an in-house academy, we can also do this for you. Again, there's a little bit more sort of, I suppose, flexibility in terms of how we can tailor it specific to your requirements. In the in-house academy, we include the elective modules that Mike and Eddie referred to earlier on, and also we include the learning buddies and the work shadowing as well. So that they're the sort of the extras that you would get if you were to run that in-house. So if you are interested, there are 2 ways to register your interest. You can either go to the link here that you see at the bottom of the screen. That will take you directly to a form on our website, so you can complete that form and that will register your interest and someone will get back to you. Alternatively, you can contact me directly if you're interested in running a Leadership Academy in-house, and I can direct you to an appropriate person who will follow up and we can have a conversation with you in terms of how we can tailor the in-house academy programme suited to your requirements. And I think that is it. I'd like to thank you all for your attention and for joining us. And we have got some time left to open up to questions and answers. So I'm going to hand you over to Rachel, and hopefully we've got some questions ready so we can kick off and answer those for you. Thank you. Over to you, Rach.
Thank you. And as Rachel, if you can open up that last poll as people are asking questions, we can do the 2 things at once and really just get some feedback in terms of whether or not this met some of your needs. So Rachel, if you open that. And equally, if you have any questions, then if you haven't already put them in, enter them. or if you want to release your microphone and ask, and hopefully we won't have too many of you at the same time. So do we have any more questions? So I'm just trying to think. Rachel, do we have any that have typed through as people have gone?
So we haven't had any questions come through yet about the presentation. So if anyone does have any questions, just pop them in the question box and I can read them out.
Okay. If not, Mike, what have been some of the challenges, I suppose, that we have faced in terms of some of the questions that people have raised while waiting?
What people have talked about in the progression of the PDLA, we've made a transition from face-to-face delivery to virtual delivery, and so there are always some issues around confidence with technology, but our reflection has been, and the reflection of our academy graduates has been that that delivering in a virtual style, whilst it can sort of impact sometimes on some of those sort of initial networking conversations, the getting to know you piece, that drops away as people become more accustomed to working together and sharing their experiences via the screen and being present in workshops, even when dialed in remotely. And what we found is that the activity, participating collaboratively in a virtual environment does not have a negative impact on the learning or on the takeaways. In fact, what it can do is also help us to focus on techniques and really sort of drive forward the collaborative aspects of some of the planning that we do, and some of the time management pieces that we do, and the prioritization, the difficult sort of prioritization questions that we take them through in module 4.
Good. Okay, Rachel, I think we can close the poll. I noticed that obviously there have some have answered where they say, please contact me, or I still have some questions. So either ask the questions now or put them in the question box, and we'll do our best to answer it now, or if you want us to come back to you, please do so. So don't be shy. Either unmute your mic.
I was going to say, particularly if you've answered that final question, no, I wanted to know more about ... just pop that in the question box and let us know what it was you were hoping to know more about. And even if we can't answer you on this presentation, then we can get back to you at a later date.
Good. Okay, and the slide that you're looking at, just to encourage you to ask questions, that's what a road looks like in South Sudan. And the quote we have there is attributed also to people: madness is an expectation. If we keep doing the same thing in the same way, something will change. And the photograph there is classic rainy season driving, where people keep getting stuck in the same bit of mud, thinking somehow that they'll, if I do it this time, I will get through, and no one ever does. So, any questions?
So we have had one question come in. I don't know if you guys can see the question box there. So from Amrit, that says, Johari window is very important and time-saving one, but sometimes we get confused with the ideas how to work on it while working in the corporate sector.
Yes. Yeah, the Johari window, we tend to use that to help people focus on multiple things, so that at the end of planning, for instance, in order to what we call go deeper as opposed to wider. So once we finish the planning, to step back and then say, well, have we thought about how we're going to do finance? Have we thought about quality? Have we thought about resource? Have we thought about diversity? Have we thought about capacity building? And what we're doing is we're using the project as a Johari window as opposed to the individual. So again, we focus quite a bit on that in module 2 as a way of getting people to think differently, which is why that module is called that. But good. I mean, thank you for that. We agree. So any other points?
Nothing else in the question box right now. So unless anyone else does have any other questions, it might be a good time to leave it there.
Good. Well, I mean, thank you from my point. We really enjoy delivering this because we meet all sorts of people. We learn every time ourselves. Mike, I think it's the same with you, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure to talk to everybody today, and I'm now going to go and reboot my laptop. I think it's
Thanks. Just for those.
Sorry. Yeah. Sorry, Rachel. Just to say from me. You go.
Okay, I just think still on the line. We'll be sending out, Sally mentioned this at the beginning of the webinar, but we'll be sending out a follow-up email tomorrow, which will include the recording from this session. So you please do share it with anyone else you think would benefit from hearing it. Share it with anyone that wasn't able to attend. And again, there's contact details on there, so you'll be able to get in touch with us if you do have any questions that you think of after the event. That's it from me. Sally, was there anything further from you?
You said it for me. Thank you. Well, thank you everyone for listening.
Hang on, we have one question that came through. So let's, I'm a student from Sri Lanka at the university. Oh, okay, perfect. I worked there. We have a subject named self-development. We're dealing with the concept of nurture students with such ideas. Yes, perfect. I suppose that's it's similar to what we're trying to do with module 1 in terms of looking in the mirror to make sure that people understand their technical side and their behavioral side, and then figure out the priorities developed. And then every single module we revisit that to get people to say, well, now you've learned something else, what else can you be doing differently, and how you'll take that away. And then the gaps between the modules is when you do things and your learning buddy helps to hold you to account. So yeah, no, these are good techniques. Thank you for sharing that. Good. Rachel, you can close us down, I think.
I will, yeah. So thank you everyone. Have a lovely rest of your Thursday, and we'll see you on the next session.
Thank you. Bye-bye.